It's not my fault. So, no, thank you so much. So that's how everything started. And what I want to share with you today is everything that is connected to that journey. So what we've learned, we shared on a podcast, we shared it on YouTube, and in the last years, I have obviously nothing to do with fashion. The only touch point I have with fashion is actually my wife, who studied fashion design, is a fashion designer and worked for the Vogue. And the closest I got to a photo shooting was with Giselle Bündchen, but she never told me that it was a photo shooting with Giselle Bündchen, so I never came close to that. I don't know why she did that actually, but that was the closest I got to fashion. But the experience we made in the last years and what we shared has a lot to do with the transformation within companies. And what I call formative moments are these moments that we look back onto and say, that's where something happened. This is where something changed. And a formative moment can be something like this. Maybe people think of that one when the wall came down as a formative moment. I had a speech the other day where the audience was a bit younger, around 20, using Snapchat, so they asked which concert that was. So that's not a concert, that's here in Berlin, but that's when the wall came down. I was 7 back then. And a formative moment is only formative if there is emotional connection to that moment. And you can have 2 emotional reactions. You can either have the oh shit moment, or you can have your magic moment, because that's the emotional connection. And whoever was 7 back that time will most likely remember that guy. So that's when David Hasselhoff came onto the wall, was singing I've Been Looking for Freedom. To me, that was the emotional connection to that moment when the wall came down. That's what I remembered. Many other people remember different things. What are other formative moments that I had? As an example, I had a letter friend in Canada, and we were writing faxes, 1996 faxes, and then I sent to him, he's called Chris, I'm still friends with him, I sent him the very first email, christoph.magnussen@tonline.de. And after that email, I sent him a fax if he would have received my email. And then he sent me a fax back, he received my email. That was a magic moment, to me, with the first email. And I was thinking, if just more people would using email. And now I'm pretty sure everyone is kind of annoyed from the emails they get every day. Who's actually happy with getting emails every day today? So not too many people. Who's using WhatsApp in the room every day? Oh, that's an oh shit moment for the Deutsche Telekom, but that's another story. 2000, another magic moment for me, but an oh shit moment for the music industry when I downloaded my very first Napster file. I'm like, that's magic. And for Universal Music, down the road here, pretty sure that's an oh shit moment. Or you've seen so many cloud tech companies here running around, fashion cloud and all that stuff. 2003, I was using Salesforce as a student and told my very first boss, that's a great idea, you should use that. And he said, are you nuts? Putting data into the internet, that's what it was called back then, into the internet. So again, you can only look back and see how formative this moment was. If you now look at that Salesforce actually has the largest building in San Francisco, everyone wants to have the business model that Salesforce has. That's what you see here. So why do I share that, and what I've learned, what we could take away from then? The latest formative moment that I had, and I'm not sure if that's oh shit or magic, is this one here. That's when Lee Sedol, that's the guy sitting in the corner, loses a game of Go. Who knows what the game of Go is and knows how to play it? Good, I quickly explained it, it's very easy. So, what you see when you see this game board of Go are these white and black dots, and what you have to do is you have to capture territory. And just to put that into perspective, Go is bigger than soccer. In Korea, Go is bigger than soccer over here. So if someone loses in Go, the whole country sees that. Do you remember the game when we lost against South Korea? Remember that? That was an oh shit moment. I had to give this talk after that, after that game. So Lee Sedol is this guy from South Korea. And when he comes into the room with his daughter, she's 4 years old with this documentary, and he realizes he has lost this game against a machine. It's not only that he just lost a game, but for him, this game is his whole life. So everything changed. And when you have your daughter in the room, and with 4 years, usually as a father, you're still David Guetta for your daughter, it changes after a while, but that's what it is till then you also have this emotional connection to that game. And I saw that documentary, and I have nothing to do with the game Go. I don't give a shit about Go. But I could feel how this guy feels about this formative moment just happening. And this just happened based on artificial intelligence a couple of years ago. And this is how this industry now takes off. This is why this merges into all the other industries that we're looking at. My question was, though, well, if it doesn't affect me right now, why should I give a shit? Well, because it will affect me at a certain point. But what can I do about it? And what can I do about it to turn a potential oh shit moment that can like wipe my company off into a magic moment that we could use? And the secret to me lies into, and that's just my experience, and we can discuss it later, in the difference between react and response. React is always this emotional reaction that you have. The first thing that comes to you when you think, oh, I have an opinion about it. And a response is always one layer below. Thinking through one more argument, thinking through one more information that you have before you react. Now let me give you some examples and what I learned. Number one, nobody knows anything today. Nobody knows anything. There are a lot of experts, so if there are experts coming, always be critical about the experts, and this includes myself. So if someone is there and says, I'm the expert in this field, might be, but it got so complex and so fast that it's very hard to judge. I'll give you one example. We tend to think very linear in most of the ways that we act. And you can do that if you count steps, and you can think of the difference between linear and exponential. If you count 30 steps in this room, it's large enough to count 30 steps in your own length. How far do you get? From the very back, you most likely will be here. To the side, you will most likely be out of the room. But what happens if you double every step from the beginning? So you go 2 for the first step, you go 4, you go 8, you go 16, you go 32. How far are you if you do that 30 times? How far? Think for yourself. You're more than 25 times around the Earth, 4 times to the moon and back, because with the power of 28, the power to 29, the power of 30, it doubles in such big numbers that it's almost impossible to calculate that if you not have an Excel file. And that's the problem with technology in the beginning. In the beginning, you don't know where it kicks off. So what happens is you have the oh shit moment, you have the magic moment here, but you have the oh shit moment here. So that's the oh shit area. So one example, to go back, the magic moment, this is when Steve Jobs comes onto the stage and says, there's one more thing in 2007, and that was the iPhone. That was the magic moment. Everyone was like, wow, the iPhone. Now we are more than 10 years later, and we know that the oh shit area behind there, that was Nokia, BlackBerry, and all the other guys. Because in 2007, the typical reaction was, well, interesting idea, but there is no keyboard, so how can it be a business phone? Is there anyone in the room still using BlackBerry? Usually there's one guy or two. Not here. That's a good sign. And the most interesting part, if you compare this linear curve and the exponential curve, is the area here, below that. And we call that the GG. The GG is the German graph. And the German graph is this very critical thinking before something kicks off. It's like, oh, we don't need Facebook in Germany. We have studioset. Or, the iPhone doesn't make sense. It doesn't have a keyboard. Or, robots will take away all jobs. That's a typical headline you read in Germany all the time. Typical German reaction, I don't like robots. So this area is the critical area where we typically react emotionally to something that is new that we cannot assume how it will end. We don't know where the oh shit area is. So to give you something to like make it business-wise, this is when Steve Jobs comes back to Apple, and that's only the Apple revenue, not the valuation. This is when he comes on stage with the iPhone 2007, and then you have the magic, 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 and if you're Nokia, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Remember, 2007, in 2007, Nokia was the most valuable brand on the planet, before Coca-Cola and before McDonald's. I will share something about that as well, because I had a company that was selling phones back then, and we had to sell very fast smartphones instead of Nokia phones. So this is the first thing. Number 2, there is a major difference between a knowing attitude and a learning attitude. And that's very difficult to put apart. And that came to me when I was interviewing this guy from Microsoft. He's Martin Geier is the chief of cloud from Microsoft. He used to work for Amazon, AWS, the by far largest web services on the planet. And he said in the podcast, we try to transform from a knowing organization into a learning organization. And I studied business, so we are usually not the big scientists in business. And I thought, that's a nice marketing headline. So interesting what you share, but what do you want to do with it? And then I listened to the podcast again, and I recognized how he was thinking about that, how critical he was, and that it kind of made him uncomfortable. Who has kids? So what happens when they learn? What happens in the brain is, you can imagine there are 2 train stations. The neurons that are not connected are like 2 train stations that are not connected. And let's say our kids stand up and learn to walk. My son is 1.5 now, so he learned to walk a few months ago. So he stands up, starts walking, and now these 2 train stations that were not connected have a connection in between. And now these 2 train stations make sense. Before that, it doesn't make sense. Now his bigger sister comes and kicks him over. So what does a kid do? Stands up again and learns a new strategy to go aside if his bigger sister comes. So that's learning. That's a learning attitude. And now you have a new train track connection between these neurons. If now you tell this to an adult and you say, hey, I have an idea for a new train track between Hamburg and Berlin, or between Munich Airport and Munich, to make it faster. What's the typical adult reaction to that? Why? We have one that's working. That's the knowing attitude. And neural networks and kids do exactly the same thing. They learn by definition. So that's why artificial intelligence, by definition, learns. And that's why it's so different from coding something. If you code something, you know what you're doing. If you work with AI and machine learning, you don't know what you're doing by definition. The difference is just our reaction, because with kids we say, oh, that's so cute what he just learned, and there's a new word. With artificial intelligence we then say, Terminator is taking over the world. Because that's, again, our emotional reaction. So what can happen if you have a knowing attitude? Again, the Nokia example, 2007, this was the headline from the Forbes magazine, again an expert magazine, saying who should take away this very first step that Nokia has now. Who can come anything close to Nokia, the cell phone king, with almost 1 billion customers? And one of the quotes from the CEO, who is on the cover here, from that issue, where Nokia was the most valuable brand, just 2 months after the iPhone came out, was, impressive with the 270,000 sold iPhones, but it will, and that's the important word, not make a dent into our customer base of 900 million customers. And this word is the important thing when it comes to attitude, because this shows how serious you take these things. You just don't have a fucking clue what's happening, but you have an opinion to it, and that's the problem. And this attitude is much different to this guy. That's Jeff Bezos in '99. When I was at school, it was pretty normal that 8 companies went public in the school breaks. So we were talking about these guys as well. In this interview, he is asked by the interviewer if he's not afraid to lose everything, because he was sued by Walmart and all these companies. So I hope we have good sound, because it's very interesting what he answers.
Seems to me the online bookstore, the Barnes & Noble bookstore, is so big it makes Amazon.com look tiny. Seems to me that this is almost a declaration of war.
Well, it's not just Barnes & Noble, but one of the
Walmart is suing you?
That's right. And
you're surrounded by enemies. People want to get you. The establishment is big and powerful. Do you ever get scared?
Well, I tell people around here to wake up petrified and afraid every morning.
Do you?
I do.
It is not uncommon for people who have achieved the kind of startling success you have in such a short period of time develop a pretty strong fear about losing it all. Are you afraid of that?
I know we can lose it all. It's not a fear. It's a fact.
I know we can lose it all. It's not a fear, it's a fact. And that's a big difference. With fear in the back, you cannot innovate. With fear in the back, you cannot move. But if you accept that's a fact that you can lose it all, you can go back and start thinking again what can happen. It's just a fact. You just don't need to be afraid of it. It's a fact. And that's a totally different attitude when it comes to learning within a company. And we interviewed guys from Amazon who were the first employees in Europe. So they worked with Bezos. And they say, yes, that's still the company's attitude that we have. It's the culture. Of course, they get bigger and bigger, but that's the culture. So that's why it's so important. Number 3, we shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us, not the other way round. We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. Everything we do with tools every day shapes how we behave. I'll give you one example. Who uses a calendar every day? Who uses a calendar every day? That's a tool. And who thinks he's the master of his calendar with not too many meetings? Oh, the one guy here, Sven. Oh, that's good. Oh, perfect. So usually one in the room. Okay, here's an example. A calendar is just a tool. I met a guy who was here at this day. That's the day when Richard Nixon leaves the White House. And this guy is in the background here, Warren Rustand, 29 years old. And he was the chief secretary of Gerald Ford, the vice president. He was in the room when Nixon came and said, Mr. Vice President, be prepared to become president. And why is that so interesting, and what has this to do with a calendar? I met this guy when we were hiking, and he looks like this now. No family relations attached, it's just the same haircut. He's 75 by now, and we were hiking up this nice mountain, and he was telling me a story of many, many things. And then after a while I said, okay, Warren, there are so many things here, we need to record a podcast. And he's like, yes, of course, but what is a podcast? Like, okay, I show you. And he shared a story, and he's known for changing the presidential calendar system from Ford to Obama. He did not want to share why Trump is not using the system, and he doesn't know it exactly, but like from Ford to Obama, the presidents used the same system. And in the US, it was reactive before that. So a president usually reacted to the requests they had. And on the first day, Gerald Ford had 300 requests for events, speaking events, where he should come. And most of the German large corporations, you actually knock out with like 10 requests per day. He had 300. So he changed the system into, okay, we first make a meeting, usually in Camp David, where we actually say, what's our legacy, what do I want to leave? And then we define what is the singular priority. This word is by definition singular, not plural. What is the one priority? And if we have that, we organize the presidential calendar in 0 to 2 weeks, 15-minute slots, max. In 2 to 6 weeks, 1-hour slots, and everything from 6 weeks beyond in daily slots. So with that system, he made every president actually master of their calendar because they knew what the priority was. That's the difference in using a tool or being used by a tool. I can share the whole podcast if you like. There are many other interesting things this guy has to share. So one of the tools that we usually use every day is this thing here, our smartphones. That's the tool we use all the time. And one question, everyone has a phone in their pocket. Who has absolutely no notification on the phone? No vibration, no sound, no little number that comes up here? Okay. How often do you look on your phone per day, on average? 80 times? So we are beyond 130 times on average per day. Question, why do you need notifications on that device? So that's a big sign for being used by a tool instead of using a tool efficiently. And now you say, yeah, but if something important happens, Bullshit. You're just distracted. You're just distracted, and it feels good in the brain to be distracted. And that's the reason why you pick up this device all the time. So if you want to make this a tool, you have to change this habit. And this is why it's so important to understand the sentence, we shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. So that's the third learning I have, and here's the challenge for you to bring it all together. We have a rule in our company, you can choose your own device, and my camera guy, when he started, said, hey, I need a laptop Dell 4K display, 3,500. I said, you're crazy. Why do you need that? And he said, if I want to edit on the road, I need that. I said, okay, then I need my MacBook 15-inch 4K display, 5,000 euros. He said, what do you need it for? I said, I'm the managing director. And he's like, what? Your task is directing and leading and not making a presentation. Why don't you share how you use your phone and just use your smartphone for a week? So if the fashion industry is changing and consumers go to the phone and your task is actually leading and you want to see how it feels like to use a different tool and how you react to that, not emotionally, but with a response, try to use your phone for at least 3 days, just your phone. No computer, write every email on the phone, every document, and see where are the limits. It will show you how your consumers actually see the world. It will help you to stay away from this large screen that we usually hide behind. And it will also open a new perspective that you don't react, but respond to change. That's just a small task. And many people already say it's not possible. And if you have that reaction, it's not possible, this is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about a knowing and a learning attitude. Okay, we're almost out of time. Nobody knows anything. Knowing versus learning attitude, and we shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. Thank you so much, and I think we don't have time for Q&A, so thank you guys. Everything is on YouTube.